Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the NFL news that has happened over the last couple of weeks. Of course, I'm not going to mention every single thing that's happened because some of the things that have happened do not mean anything at all. But some of the more high profile things I'm going to talk about. And as always, if you have any thoughts or comments on anything I'm going to talk about, please feel free to let me know. First, we have Carson Wentz going to the Washington Commanders. Of course, we know he played for the Eagles, and then he had 1 year with the Colts. And then the Colts traded him to the Commanders. And Carson Wentz had one good season as an NFL quarterback, and that was with the Eagles when Frank Reich, who of course now is the Colts head coach, was the Eagles offensive coordinator. And I don't know what in the world Carson Wentz has done in the last 3 to 4 years to make the Commanders think he's a good quarterback, because he's not. Now, not only is he not a good quarterback, but the Commanders look like they have no idea what they're doing. They have 5 or 6 quarterbacks that they're just jumbling all together and putting them in a quarterback room. And they make it look like they're just saying, you know what, if we just have 8 or 9 quarterbacks, somebody's going to step up and be good. Somebody's going to be our top quarterback. And that's not how you get a good quarterback. They just got a bunch of quarterbacks that are not any good. Now, Carson Wentz is probably going to be their best option compared to all the other QBs they have. But if Carson Wentz is your answer at quarterback, you have no idea what you're doing as a franchise. Now, of course, the Colts have to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback. But I do not think that Carson Wentz is the answer for the Washington Commanders, which, by the way, if I have not said it yet, I hate that name. And then we have Deshaun Watson going to the Cleveland Browns in a blockbuster trade that looked like it was never going to happen, because for the longest time it looked like the Texans were just not going to trade Deshaun Watson. And there was a big rumor going around that he was down to the Falcons or the Saints, and he chose the Browns, which I'm glad he did, because after playing for that pitiful franchise, the Houston Texans, I'm sure Deshaun Watson wants to win. And we know the Falcons, well, they're the Falcons, so we know they're going to suck. And the Saints now have a new head coach. Not saying they can't be good, but Dennis Allen has been a head coach before, and it was a complete disaster. So if this go around is as bad as the last go around, the Saints are going to be terrible. So the Falcons are going to suck, and there's a pretty good chance the Saints are going to suck. So I'm sure Deshaun Watson wants to play for a winner, which is why he chose the Browns. But it was a shock, because most people didn't think he was going to get traded, because it appeared for the longest time the Texans were just not going to give him up. But hopefully the Browns will be a better team now with him at quarterback than they were with the pedestrian Baker Mayfield. Speaking of Baker Mayfield, of course, now he wants a trade, obviously, because Deshaun Watson is going to be the quarterback. But around Thursday of this past week, Baker Mayfield was complaining, even before the Deshaun Watson trade went through, that he wanted a trade. But the Browns should have saw this coming. And if you wonder why the Browns have been an average football team for 20 years, that's your answer. You've got a quarterback in Baker Mayfield who has a history of being a hothead. He has a history of not being able to hide his emotions. And the Browns should have known right when they started talking about Deshaun Watson, whether the trade went through or not, that Baker Mayfield was going to ask for a trade, because he's not going to want to play for anybody who does not show confidence in him. It would not surprise me at all to see Baker Mayfield be the starting quarterback for the Colts next year, because he would be a better option than anybody they have on their roster right now at quarterback. And then, of course, I've already mentioned the Tom Brady thing, but I'll mention it again in case you did not see that video. He's back. Me personally, I said the whole entire thing was nothing but a publicity stunt. It was a PR stunt, and it was just Tom Brady wanting attention because he came out and said the last 2 months have shown me that on the field is where I need to be, and I'm coming back. Like he missed football so much, but how can you miss football when you haven't missed football? It's the off season. So even though you supposedly retired, you didn't miss any games. So how do you know you miss a game when you have not missed a game? That was the dumbest thing I ever heard in all my whole born days. So I think it was a PR stunt, especially considering right about the time the NCAA March Madness bracket is going to come out, Tom Brady just happens to come out and say he's returning. He was trying to take all the attention off college basketball and put it on Thomas Brady. But the rumor going around is that he retired because him and the Bucks coaching staff and the Bucks ownership do not get along, and he wanted out of Tampa. And he thought that since he's under contract with the Bucks, if he announced he was retiring, the Bucks would just release him, and then he could come out of retirement and sign with San Francisco because it looks like they're not going to bring back Jimmy Garoppolo. So Tom Brady thought he could go be the starting quarterback for San Francisco. I don't believe that. I think that's garbage. I think he retired and came back so quick just to get attention and put all the attention on Tom Brady because he's almost 45 years old and coming back to play another season. And then we have Aaron Rodgers. I've already mentioned this as well, is re-signing with the Green Bay Packers. There was a rumor that he was going to retire, a rumor he was going to be traded, but he ended up re-signing a huge mega deal with the Green Bay Packers. All that whining, all that moaning, all that groaning, all that complaining about Green Bay not giving him what he wants, and they've went out and done nothing to improve their team, and he still re-signed with them. And then we have longtime defensive player Von Miller. Of course, he played a long time with the Broncos, and then this past season he got traded to the Rams and won him a Super Bowl ring, and now he has signed with the Buffalo Bills. And to make a move on the roster for him and to save some salary cap money, the Bills in turn cut star Lotalele. And then we have the Cleveland Browns. Speaking of the Browns, going out and getting Amari Cooper, who was one of the big-time wide receivers for the Cowboys. Just some draft picks pretty much going in that trade, but I was stunned to see the Cowboys give him up because he's still really young, and he's still a great wide receiver. So now Deshaun Watson will have Amari Cooper to throw to. I think that's a huge upgrade for the Browns and a huge downgrade for the Cowboys. What they were thinking, I have no idea, but of course it doesn't matter. They still have Jerry Jones, so they're going to suck anyway. And then we have Mitch Trubisky going to the Steelers. Speaking of teams that have no idea what they're going to do at quarterback, we have Mitch Trubisky, who don't even know what his name is because in college, his 1 year at North Carolina, he was Mitch Trubisky. And then for some reason, his 1 year at college made the Bears think he was going to be some great, phenomenal quarterback. So they go out and draft him. And then during the NFL draft, he says, you know what? I prefer Mitchell. I want to be called Mitchell Trubisky. So the past few years, he's been Mitchell Trubisky. And now he comes out and says, oh, you know what? I've changed my mind again. I prefer to be called Mitch. What does it matter? It's the same name. But I guess the Steelers figured that he is better than Mason Rudolph, and he is better than Dwayne Haskins. But I think it also goes to show that none of these NFL teams have any confidence in any of the college quarterbacks that are going to be available coming up here in the NFL draft, which is right around the corner, because otherwise the Steelers wouldn't go out and sign Mitch Trubisky when we know already that he's not any good. And the Commanders wouldn't go out and sign their 15th quarterback in Carson Wentz when we already know he's not any good. But I think it goes to show that none of these NFL GMs are high at all on any of these quarterbacks this year that are going to be coming up here in the draft, which is right around the corner, because if the Steelers had any confidence at all in any of those quarterbacks, they would not have went out and got Mitchell, whatever you want to call yourself, Trubisky. And then we have Devante Adams going to the Raiders. Of course, Devante Adams and Raiders quarterback Derek Carr were teammates in college at Fresno State, and now they're teammates again. He was by far the Packers' best wide receiver, and they traded him to the Raiders. So the Raiders get a huge upgrade at wide receiver, and they already had a really good wide receiver group, and now it gets even better with the addition of Devante Adams. And then we have Quintorris Jones Jr., better known as Julio, was cut by the Titans after just one season. He is definitely past his prime, but he's still a pretty good wide receiver. He's no longer great, but he's still pretty good. So I just wonder where he will end up signing, but he was released by the Titans after one season. And the reason why I said Quintorris Jones is because most people probably thought his actual name was Julio, but it's not. It's Quintorris. Where Julio comes from, I have no earthly idea, but I'm glad that his real name is not Julio, because I've always said your real name can't be Julio Jones because you're not Hispanic. You can't have one Hispanic name and one American name. You either got to be Julio Holmes or you got to be Julio Jones. You can't be Julio Jones, but his name is actually Quintorris Jones Jr. Any thoughts on any of these NFL trades and acquisitions? Please feel free to let me know. It's been a wild NFL offseason already. We still have a long way to go before the 2022 season cranks up. My wife claims that a man in camouflage is really sexy. I just don't see it. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.